It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello and welcome to the show. I am fired up today to talk with my guest. Joining me is Conor, the founder and CEO of HipLead, an outbound sales as a service company based in San Francisco. You know, growing your business in zero time demands that you have a steady flow of qualified prospects streaming through your pipeline. But how are you going to get those leads? You know, there's ongoing war of words between various factions in the sales industry about where that responsibility rests for generating prospects. You know, is it cold calling or is it marketing? Well, perhaps there's a better way to do that, because really, what you hire your salespeople to do actually is sell, right? As opposed to out generating leads. So my guest today believes he's pioneering a better way to prospect and generate leads, and he's going to sort it all out for us. Conor, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andy. Glad to be here.
So just take a short minute, provide a real introduction to yourself other than what I said.
Yeah, absolutely. So at HipLead, we help companies scale their outbound sales, and we do that by taking over the top of the outbound funnel. So we work with companies to basically we have massive amounts of data that we get from crawling the web. We're sort of a data-first company. And then we use that data to target very specific cohorts of segments using information that, you know, it's very hard to get doing it at scale unless you use a lot of labor to do it. We create these very targeted groups, and then we work with our clients on a consultative basis to run outbound cold email campaigns. We're known for getting a very high rate of response and interested rates, and we do that because of a combination of using the data and pairing that with very specific messages that are focused on pain points and value propositions to each one of these very tight audiences. So we help companies scale top of the funnel. We don't do selling. We're just focused. We're kind of a one-trick pony in a certain way, in that we're just focused on lead generation and outbound email campaigns, but we're very good at it.
So would you say that, without jumping too much into the buzzwords, so the leads you generate, are they then typically, you say top of the funnel, they typically then entered into some sort of marketing nurture campaign, or are they actually turned over to sales forces to follow up?
So we'll run that initial activation campaign. Oftentimes we'll run the nurture campaign, and then we'll coordinate that with the company's sales team. So, if you're running an outbound email campaign for andypaul.com, we would send those emails from you or from a member of your sales team. So folks who work with us, there's the recipients of a message have no idea there's a third party involved.
Yeah,
it's coming from your sales team and all.
Okay, but the question is, the leads then, in terms of how your clients then act upon the leads once they receive them, do they consider them sales qualified leads at that point, or where in that spectrum typically?
Sure. Yeah. So when a respondent responds, when someone responds to an email campaign, then our team goes and qualifies them, and we either qualify them as being have responded as interested, saying they actually want a meeting, responded as if they asked a question about the product, engaged. If they ask for more information, or they handed you off to the correct individual in the organization, like actually directed you, not just say contact sales.
Right.
And those are what we call interested, which we also call hand raises. So that then goes to the sales team, and the sales team then, depending on their qualification process, goes and actually qualifies them. The goal, of course, is to get them on the phone. So it's somewhere around a marketing qualified lead. They demonstrated intent by responding, being interested. So usually these are marketing qualified leads. Our clients get the marketing qualified leads that respond, and they also own all the leads we source for them in the process of running the email campaign. So they have data qualified leads, and then they have the marketing qualified leads that respond, and then usually their sales team, we'd coordinate with their sales team and the calling process. Sometimes clients call, sometimes they don't. Obviously, it depends on their process.
Okay. So if we take a step back and look back at the genesis of HipLead, where did the idea come from? I mean, what did you see in the market based on experiences you had that said, okay, we've got a need for this?
Yeah. So this is my third company. I founded a company in 2011. It was a B2B telephony startup, and we were part of the Y Combinator
Mm-hmm.
accelerator. And then it unfortunately wasn't. We got a little funny and ran it, but it didn't last too long. It was a short-lived company. Then joined another company that was a B2B marketplace for buyers and sellers of consumer packaged goods in the wholesale level. And
Okay.
then eventually founded HipLead later on. But after I left my second company, the second company wrapped up, what we did, we realized that a lot of my other friends who were founders started asking me to do the same thing for them that we did to grow both those companies. And at the time, we were just being scrappy. We're doing like sales hacking, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
but we were running outbound email campaigns, and we got to be very good at them. And that was responsible for almost all the growth of those last two companies. I was sort of in between things, looking for things to do, and all of a sudden, all my other friends that were founders started coming to me, and eventually, we started scaling the company up that way. So we grew word of mouth, and then added a lot of really great technology and technologists on as we grew. But we started out as a consultancy effectively about 2 years ago.
Yeah, very interesting. So how is using HipLead, let's say, different than running your own outbound marketing campaign, email campaign? I mean, what do you do differently that sets you apart from what somebody could do if somebody's got Marketo or HubSpot or any of those systems? What are you doing that's incrementally better than what they're doing?
Sure. So there's two ways in which we reason why folks work with us. One is that this is all we do. As I mentioned, we're kind of a one-trick pony. But as a result, we're very good at it. So we can get companies up to a level of getting 3, 4, 5, 6% interested rate to other outbound campaigns in a month. And usually, if you're a new company or if you haven't run outbound yourself for this existing organization, it takes a quarter or more, sometimes even longer than that, to kind of get it to the point where outbound is running as a machine. And so we get this machine running very, very, very quickly, and because we've done it all, we've worked with almost every single audience that's out there. We know the audience. We know what messages resonate. We measure and test everything. We've got a team that just does that. So A, we get it going faster, and B, we scale. We have our own lead generation system. We do everything end to end. We've got 130 million contacts in our system, 20 million companies around the world, and we're generating for some of our larger clients 50 to 100,000 new prospects per month with some of the very large companies we work with. So we can really scale that system up in a way just because of our technology and expertise that other folks can't. But to get back to your question about using Marketo and other systems, we also use specialized tools that we've tested and honed over the years, and gotten to be very good at using them. So we can kind of do that up. Usually we recommend folks use a solution like Outreach, or there's a number of other ones that detect responses. So responses are really the key, is a key metric that we look at. Responses and then interest responses. And those are the two metrics that we focus on. Not as much as interested, not as much open rate or click-through rate. We really want to focus on people actually taking real action, expressing actual interest.
Right. So you talked about this product, Outreach. I want you to explain what that is for people that are listening.
Sure. Yeah, Outreach is effectively email sales automation tool. Good friends with the company, with the founders there, and basically Outreach allows your sales reps, sort of a competitor to Yesware and Tout, a number of other ones. There's SalesLoft Prospector and SalesLoft Cadence rather.
Right.
And all they do is they're like they send emails that look like personalized emails. So and they come from your email sender. So it would plug into a real person's inbox, my inbox, per se, and then it would look like it was sent. It doesn't necessarily have a big footer, and the responses, the system tracks the actual responses. So you set up a series of emails, say 4 or 5 touches, set over time, and if someone engages at a certain touch, if they respond, it stops that sequence. If they don't, the sequence continues. So it's automating the follow up part of of sales prospecting of outbound. So it's automating the email part of that.
Right. So go back to you're saying the reference to outreach then is that so if somebody's subscribed to your service, you provide them leads, they're going to feed them into a sequence they've set up in outreach.
Yeah, outreach oftentimes is the one we usually recommend we work with them to do.
Got it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. So now one of the trade-offs that we talked about at the beginning is, okay, cost trade-off between using your service versus, what most companies do, especially small businesses, is, hey, I'm going to get somebody on the phone and bang some phone calls. So what have you seen in terms of, telling people about the cost trade-off between your service versus theirs in terms of generating leads?
Yeah. Well, it depends on your market. So if you're going only after enterprise, let's say you've got an ecosystem of total contacts that are like under 3,000, it's probably best to actually hit the phones. That's what we tell clients that come to us, because you could dial with one or two people, everyone, and have a great personalized discussion as long as you have sales reps that are trained and you have a process set up for doing that. And usually, companies that have only 1,000 or 2,000 total prospects that they could reach at all, we actually usually tell them to do that. So for those scenarios, HipLead, I'd say I'd definitely go along and say, look, hit the phones yourself. That's probably the best thing to go. If you're dealing with companies that are, if you're dealing with the ecosystem of 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, if you're reaching out to SMBs or mid-market areas, that it becomes very difficult to scale very quickly this outbound process. I'm sure you can get 500 people into a room, but the overhead, the management of all that, it's just slow. It'll just take a while to do. And we, in my other companies, we did that. And at HipLead, we have an outbound phone calling team as well, but we work that in conjunction with outbound email campaigns. And so we run an outbound campaign first. We then coordinate the calling once the campaign is finished. So, the whole adage about, 1 out of 10 people ready to buy right then, and, 1 out of 10 are never going to buy. So the outbound campaign picks up that 1 out of 10 immediately.
Right.
And you activate those, and those go in, and you've got a nice steady supply. Then for the other ones that are already in there, you can call them down. They're familiar through brand. They know who you are, and then you get them into a nice nurturing campaign and manage it. So, those are two different. Those are ways that we do ourselves internally, So that's basically kind of to answer your question. Hopefully, they answered it.
Yeah, it did. So, how are you different than other outbound, outsourced lead generation services? I mean, so somebody's, and I'm thinking this from the context that people are listening to this, CEO of an SMB or a mid-sized company, how do they identify, okay, this is the service for me versus some other service? So sort of may start with who's the ideal customer profile for you, and then we'll segue into that second part of the question.
Yeah. So a lot of our clients are SaaS businesses. And what we find are the folks that tend to work best with us are companies that are oriented to work best for cold outbound. So companies that do work well have a clear and concise way of describing their product that someone can instantly get what the benefit could be in a second, in a single sentence or two, where their solution solves a clear and defined problem. Mm-hmm. And that we can identify, or they can identify, potential prospects that have that problem, that have that pain point, and so SaaS companies are oftentimes good targets for that because they're very oftentimes going to be very specific pain points they arise out of.
Point solutions, oftentimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And consultancies will work as well as long as they're very specialized. Mm-hmm. Things that tend to be a little harder to sell over outbound, like IP phone solutions, things like that that every single person needs, but the vendors themselves are hard to differentiate. Those tend to not work as well. Things that have to involve a true relationship sell, mm-hmm. or a pressure sales environment. Outbound isn't necessarily the best solution for those, but there's a humongous market, that rest of the market, where they've got to input a lot of labor and a lot of management overhead to get to get to market, and we can help them get to market much, much, much faster, and to really scale outbound in the whole predictable revenue sort of way.
Right. And do your customers primarily have fairly established content marketing presence as well?
It really depends. So we have customers on 2 or 3 different flavors. One are companies that are relatively sort of A-round stage. They've raised a couple $1 million, or they have a product, they have product market fit, and then they have a small sales team. That's sort of one end. The other end, we have some clients that are very large companies that have only done content and inbound, and now they're ready to kind of attack enterprise and mid-market. Mm-hmm. Some companies that that have had that have or even have growing out a B2B team within a consumer company. That's another example.
Right.
And then you have kind of companies in the middle that are basically have a sales team, have run outbound, and either they want to try new things and test it out, they want to scale it up really fast, or they want to refresh the list they already have. And those are things that we specialize in doing. So if they've got they want to say, look, we have other data sources, we have our Salesforce has like 20,000 leads in it, but gosh, we don't, it's just a huge mess. And, so we'll go in there and we could find net new contacts at given companies all in an automated fashion, and refresh a list at a regular basis in a way that's very, very easy for us to do and very difficult to other folks to, because of the technology that's behind our platform.
Right. So you could refresh a list, or for a customer that doesn't have a list, you can go out and you source that through your own database, right? You sort the 20 million records, or however, it was more than that, wasn't it?
Exactly. 130 million.
130 million, I'm sorry. And you can do a slice and dice on that and target to help a specific customer need.
Exactly. Like, for example, we can figure out, if a company has, let's say you're looking to only sell to companies that have offices in 2 different countries. Figure out that. Let's say you're selling to companies with offices in 2 countries but need to have a certain number of sales reps. You can figure out how many sales reps that company has using a certain technology. And then we can only target people that have talked about or possess a specific skill set. So we can get very, very, very granular. Like granular to the point where you'd have to have a team of a large team of people spend a lot of time shifting through data. And the issue is that it's hard to train. It's hard to train SDRs and folks to shift through all this data at a way that's
well, it's impossible. It's not hard. It's impossible. I mean, you have a hard enough time training them to sell, let alone sifting through data. So
exactly, because honestly, it's one of the harder. It's one of the more painful jobs in sales. That's why SDRs, in San Francisco area, we're finding that SDRs last at the company an average around 1 year. That's what we're finding, and in other areas of the United States, about 2 to 3 years on average.
Well, and I think part of that, though, that's an interesting point. Let's come back to that after the break, because I do want to talk about the longevity of SDR, because I think actually your solution is sort of an answer for some of that. So we're going to take a short break. Back shortly with my guest Conor Lee, CEO of HipLead. Now, before we go, I'm going to pose a hypothetical scenario for you. This is a question I ask each of my guests, and so here's the scenario, and you'll answer when we come back from the break.
Great.
You're a new sales manager hired into a company whose sales are flatlined, and upper management says, hey, we need to turn this baby around. We hired Conor to do it. What are the 2 things you do in the first week that could have the biggest impact? So you think about that, and after the break, we'll get your answer. We'll be right back.
Attention, sales leaders. Would you like to give your sales team the tools to drive more quality connects, scale their outreach, and spend more time selling? Well, you can with LiveHive. Get your ROI. Try it now at livehive.com/ROI. That's LiveHive, LiveHive.com/ROI.
Hi, welcome back to the show. My guest today, Conor Lee, CEO, founder of HipLead. And before we jump back into talking about SDRs and job longevity and so on, you're going to answer my question I posed before the break. New sales manager, need to do a sales turnaround on a company. It's urgent. What are the first 2 things you do the first week that could have the biggest impact?
Sure. So So the first one, I have to say, we kind of have an unfair advantage. I'm going to assume that
You're gonna hire HipLead is the first thing.
well, I'm going to assume you have some of the data that we have, and then I'll give you the second answer will be something that anyone can do.
Right.
The first one would be basically what we'll do is we'll analyze all the companies, all their clients over time, and then opportunities that have gone pretty far that haven't closed, and then we'll create a model and look for companies that you wouldn't think would fit it but match all the criteria. And we do that because we have the ability to just look at so many different companies in the United States. So we'd go in and say, okay, well, let's look at the opportunities you guys have closed over this period of time. Even if they came in from a friend or a long-term referral, or whatever else, what internally at that company made them buy? And then we'll go and try to find and model other companies that look like that. And usually what we'll do is then we'd go and run outbound campaigns to test these hypotheses, and that very quickly. I'd say that the second way, which is one that I've done numerous times at other companies, is again I go back to old opportunities and old leads and dive in there, understand really quickly, try to get a good understanding of why they didn't close, get an understanding if their existing pain points still exist, or within that area, and then basically run an outbound campaign to re-engage those folks. It's going to be obviously your old ops are very likely going to be the fastest things to close depending on your sales cycle. So if you want to get some quick revenue and get some quick momentum in the bank, that's likely going to be the first thing that you should do, because then you just have a lot of conversations. You get a good understanding of the company. As an outsider coming in, of course they will know the flaws of the sales process because they didn't close. You'll understand why they didn't close very quickly, rather than having to spend a lot of time with new inbound prospects.
Yeah, no, I think that's very clever about going to the opportunities that didn't close, because statistics range anywhere from, I've seen recently, just from 50 to 70% of opportunities in the pipeline never close, right? So if that's the case, if they didn't close, chances are they probably haven't made a decision if that was in a relatively recent time frame. Going hitting them up more effectively with a better value proposition messaging and so on could be a good way to reignite and revive some of those opportunities. Excellent.
Thanks.
Good job, you passed. Okay, so it wasn't a test. On to the next. So we were talking about, before the break, we were talking about SDR longevity. You're saying in San Francisco, and I presume that's true for the Valley in general, that it's a year for SDRs as average longevity on a job. Isn't part of the issue there, though, that they're having so few conversations that these people are basically are bored? I mean, part of the deal is that they don't get a chance to get better at what they're doing, because they've been making 50 calls a day. I think the statistics are make about 50 on average. Maybe have 5 real conversations, sales conversations in a day. I mean, it wouldn't have perhaps if they're using HipLead and they're putting more opportunities in the top of the funnel that filter down, that maybe over a period of time, these guys actually have a greater likelihood of making a call that they actually connect with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredibly easy to get burnt out, just in that boiler room environment, where you're just hitting the phones and dialing. And obviously, if you're a young kid or not even a young kid, you come into that environment, you're gonna want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Oftentimes, or get rewarded, very well for your position in life, comparatively, to keep that going. And I myself, in high school, worked in a boiler room call center for a couple summers, and kind of got started on sales that way. So I definitely know, I didn't last. I think I lasted 2 months. Well, it's also Phoenix, so it's 110 outside. There's nothing else in summer, but I definitely know that. The good thing is now I think a lot of companies are dividing up are further, for better or worse, are further specializing their SDRs. So they're doing inbound SDRs and outbound SDRs.
Right.
And for the outbound SDRs, they are segmenting their leads into, and this is what we usually encourage our clients to do, is to segment your leads into A, B, and C, and only call the A's, hand email the A's, the B's and C's, which should be 90% of your leads, of a lead. Of course, it depends on what your market is and all that. But take that 10%, call them down, handwrite them. Sure, use a template, but personalize the heck out of it. Research them, do all that, and the rest of it, run the outbound campaign for the rest. Because then you're gonna get that 5-10% that respond because it's a good time. You're gonna get that 5-10%. You start a conversation, just pick their interest, and then you can also spend the rest of the time running outbound email, dialing those A targets. And of course, after you run through all those, you can go down to B and go down to C and call them. But you're gonna find your plate's a lot more full with good prospects that spend your time qualifying instead of just spending all your time on the phone.
Especially spending your time dialing, right? Because if somebody's making 50 calls a day, they're basically dialing, right? 80% of the time you're going to get voicemail. So to me, it seems like part of the problem for SDR, especially if you find someone that's good and worth investing in, which presumably is the case because you wouldn't have hired them in the first place, is that, what if you could fill their day with 50 conversations instead of 5?
Exactly.
And then maybe you'd change the dynamic in terms of job satisfaction and how long they would stay and getting a better return on your investment. That's why, I'm fascinated by tools like yours and tools like Connect and Sell, for instance. That's, giving the reps the opportunity where they're making 1,000 dials a day for a rep and they can generate 40, 50 conversations. You see the job satisfaction really skyrockets and longevity skyrockets because they're actually getting good at what they're doing because they're practicing it more often. And I think that's part of the key of keeping people is that they just have to practice it.
Yeah. And like any job, the more time you have doing it, the better you are, the better the sales becomes, the better the relationship is. SDRs are an incredibly important part of any company. It's your first introduction to your organization, and if it's someone who's really green and isn't satisfied with their job, the chances of a closing down the road are going to be a lower one.
Yeah, and if you look at it from a numbers standpoint, if you get somebody that's literally, as this industry standard statistics are, SDR may be having 5 sales conversations a day out of yielding 50 to 60 calls. So over 20 days, 25 business days, maybe they make 100 conversations in a month. Whereas if you use a tool, some of these power dialers and so on that enable you to have 40, 50 conversations a day, you get the practice in 2 days that you would normally get in a month. It seems like their effectiveness for a company is just going to skyrocket. And I think it demonstrates it does, actually. I think the companies that are doing it. So anyway, without getting too sidetracked, but I think HipLead obviously could feed into that environment. And for people who are listening to this and saying, gosh, we need to look at new solution to help us accelerate the pace of our lead generation and keep our SDRs busier, this is a good tool to do that. I just gave you an advertisement.
Well, great. Well, thanks.
There you go.
Yeah. And I guess the thing that we do that we like to say is that we don't try to reinvent your sales process. We try to fit into the existing process and augment it. Save your SDRs time, allow you guys to have more conversations, and then once that conversation starts, get out of your way and let you close. So your reps are spending less time closing and more time closing and less time doing everything else.
Well, I think even if you're in an environment, as a lot of companies just haven't done the specialized sales role, especially in smaller companies, mid-sized companies. They still might have a hybrid force where people are a combination inbound or inside outside. The fact is, you're still at the same basic challenge. You need to get leads into the system, into the funnel, and you got to find a tool that's going to help you do that to accelerate the pace of your growth. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. So glad we had you on the show today. It's good information. So in the last segment of the show, we've got some rapid fire questions to ask you. You can give me one-word answers, or you can elaborate, however you wish. You ready?
I'm ready. And
these are really serious questions, as you'll see here. So what's the most powerful sales tool in your personal sales arsenal?
I'd have to say, for us, it's unfortunately, it's HipLead, but our secondary one.
I'd say for you personally, when you're selling something, what's your most powerful sales tool?
Me personally, expertise.
Expertise, okay. Great answer. So what's the one tool you use for managing sales at HipLead that you can't live without?
Right now, our current sales team is one-on-ones with all the reps themselves.
Okay, so explain what that is.
One-on-one meeting, a really quick 10 to 15-minute meeting that I have every week with really everyone on my team to kind of just get an idea. It's a nice way to get a pulse of what's going on in the company and to keep me involved. My VP of sales does it as well. Those are I find to be very, very, very helpful. Of course, that doesn't work forever as the organization scales, but right now it's a right tool for our company size.
Okay, who's your sales role model?
Gosh, sales role model, huh? It's funny. I haven't received any formal sales training.
Good.
At any point. I mean, so I don't know if I can say I have one sales role model, but I have worked in the past. Interestingly, for this is going to be an interesting answer, but I worked for politicians. I was a politico.
The ultimate sales job.
My career, yeah.
The ultimate sales job. Yeah,
and I learned a lot about selling as leading as selling, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That I learned a lot from them. So I worked for a number of different politicians and at the California state level and national level, and and I thought from the politicians, from a number of them, they had a lot of their other issues, but they were all incredible salespeople. But you didn't call it sales; it was called leadership, political acumen,
right?
Personality. All those sort of things were kind of wrapped into, really the presentation of their idea and the direction, and then getting this team of constituents to go this direction and believe them. So,
great. So, who's the politician you worked for?
One of the ones I worked for was Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, okay.
When I was pretty young, he was the San Francisco governor, and he's lieutenant governor right now. And he was a very skilled speaker and especially so.
Yeah. So has he topped out? I mean, at one point I was a Gavin Newsom fan. Has he topped out, or does he still have potential?
Well, we'll see. I haven't been involved in it for a while myself. I mean, that was like 10 years ago. But I think he's currently lieutenant governor. I think he's trying to get a Senate seat, I would estimate, or at least. So there are a few scandals with him, and
the wife scandal I remember. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he can go to the Senate. That's a good retirement gig.
Yeah.
So, what's the one book that every salesperson should read? Doesn't have to be a sales book, but one book every salesperson should read.
I really, as someone who's as a CEO and a salesperson, being a CEO is a certain type of salesperson. I really, really enjoyed Brad Horowitz's book. And Andreessen Horowitz, Ben Horowitz, rather.
Oh, Ben Horowitz, yeah.
Yeah. So his book, I'm trying to think of the name of it right here. Pull it up. The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yeah, and which I really enjoyed quite a great deal. I've just started the Challenger Sales, which I'm enjoying so far, but just started it. I found that to be really, really interesting and relevant. But I guess Ben Horowitz's book isn't necessarily about sales in the traditional way of thinking about sales, but it's about considering your audiences and how to talk to them, how to message to them, and how to work with every audience as their own audience, and how to deal with things and when things go bad, basically.
Great.
Which is good for startups.
Well, hey, it's good for every business. So, just tough question. What's your favorite music to listen to psych yourself up for an important call or meeting?
Ooh, I have a Spotify playlist.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my brother he's quite musical, and so I usually follow his playlist. So it's usually indie rock and electronic music, somewhere in between that. So between a lot rock and electronic, and so I usually just turn on his playlist and listen to that. So
indie rock, okay. So last question: what's the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
For most frequent question, I guess the question is, are they qualified by my salespeople, my sales staff? Would they, are these qualified? What do you think?
Right.
Or I guess the other one is, it's sort of really what. Do we have any? I guess the one thing is that because we serve so many different audiences, we
right.
always try to find clients current clients or past clients that have reached the same audience, going after the same audience or selling to the same audience that our new sales would be selling to.
Right.
So we're always trying. My sales team is always asking me to understand how this client is similar to other clients. So we've actually put together docs and a lot of other things to kind of break down which of our clients sold to what audience and how this is different from the others. So usually it's something along those lines, like is this prospect qualified, A, and B, if they're qualified, have we sold to other companies like them in the past, and if so, what happened and how are their results? So, but hopefully we're doing a little bit less of that lately because we've put together sort of a system to kind of manage that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great, good answer. Well, that was it. So I want to thank today's guest, Conor Lee, founder and CEO of a really cool new company called HipLead. Conor, tell folks how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit us at HipLead.com, and we're happy to sort of give you some sample leads and look at your audience, and we'll feel free to swing on by to HipLead.com.
Okay, perfect. So remember, everybody, make it a part of your day, every day, to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. Subscribing to this podcast can be an easy way to do that. Make sure you don't miss any of our conversations with top sales experts and business leaders like our guest today, Conor Lee, who share their experience and expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com. Hi, this is Andy. I have a special offer for loyal listeners of Accelerate. It's a no-obligation free trial of my zero-time selling interactive online training. Now, I've worked with thousands of sales reps to teach them how to use my zero-time selling to boost their productivity and transform the results. And so if you want to learn the same proven strategies to help you open more doors, have more effective sales conversations with prospects, and close more orders, then my zero-time selling interactive training system is a fit for you. It's incredibly simple to start. Just take out your smartphone and text the word TRUST, that's TRUST, to 96,000. Now, do you have your phone ready? Send a text to 96000. That's a 9 and a 6 followed by 3 zeros. Now enter the single word message TRUST and hit send, and you hear right back from me with instructions on how to sign up for your free trial on my zero-time selling interactive training. I look forward to seeing you there.